My name is Joanne Hildebrand, and I used to think being the dependable one was something to be proud of. It meant stability. It meant family could lean on me. But that day, the day of my sister's baby shower, I learned that being dependable can look a lot like being disposable. The room was all pastel pink and fake laughter, an Instagram dream come true. Candace's Mama-to-Be sash glittered under the chandelier. I'd rented the hall myself, $2,300 out of my pocket, because it would mean so much if you handled it, Joanne. You're so organized. And I did. The catering, the cake, the balloon arch that nearly killed me to install, even the favors. Tiny glass jars of pink Himalayan salt, tied with satin ribbons. Every detail had my fingerprints on it. Candace, meanwhile, arrived 40 minutes late, posting selfies in the parking lot while I was sweating over dessert trays. When she finally entered, the crowd of her friends squealed, phones flashing. She looked radiant, yes, but smug, like a queen entering her court. I smiled anyway, because that's what I did. I smiled through everything. Then came the moment, the one that still replays in slow motion. Candace handed me a cupcake, lemon cream with gold sprinkles, and said loud enough for half the room to hear, "You're not really family, Joanne. You're just the one who pays for everything." Her husband Nick laughed, that awful hollow laugh of his. Some guests chuckled awkwardly. The DJ's music dipped for just a second, long enough for me to feel every eye flick toward me. My fingers froze around the cupcake wrapper. The gold foil stuck to my skin. I blinked, once, twice, waiting for her to laugh and say it was a joke. But she didn't. She just smiled, sipping her mimosa like she'd delivered a punchline. My mother leaned in behind her champagne flute and whispered, "Don't overreact. She's pregnant." Overreact? My chest tightened. I looked around at the decorations I'd paid for, the wall of flowers, the overpriced catering trays, the pink neon sign that said, "Oh baby," all shining proof of my generosity. Candace waddled toward the photo booth, hand on her bump, the other clinging to her phone as she filmed her friends squealing, "#blessed." Nick high-fived one of his buddies and muttered something about useful sisters. Useful. That's what I was. Not loved, not appreciated. Useful. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw the cupcake or shout. Instead, I walked slowly to the gift table, the noise around me turning into a dull hum. Among the piles of pink-wrapped boxes sat my white envelope, the one with my handwriting on the front and a $500 check inside. I picked it up, held it just high enough for Candace to see, and said, loud but calm, "Then let them pay for it. I'm out." The room went silent. A fork clattered. A woman gasped softly. Candace turned, confusion flashing across her face. "What? Joanne, what are you doing?" "Taking back what's mine," I said, and I left. No yelling, no slamming doors, just heels clicking on tile, and the faint sound of mimosas fizzing behind me. I walked past the caterers unloading trays of food I'd paid for, past the custom balloon arch, out into the crisp afternoon light. I didn't cry. Not yet. But as I reached my car, I felt something strange. Not anger, not grief, but relief. Like I'd just stopped playing a role in a play I never auditioned for. They thought that would be the end of it, the quiet exit of the boring sister. But they didn't know I'd already made other moves, quieter ones. I'd spent weeks noticing things. Candace's unpaid bills, the lease I'd co-signed, the way she always said, "I'll pay you back," but never did. I wasn't going to scream or beg for respect. I was going to earn silence, the kind that comes when people finally realize you're done being used. The next morning, there was a knock they didn't expect, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the dependable one. I felt like the storm they never saw coming. People always assume big changes happen in loud moments, shouting, slamming doors, dramatic exits. But mine started quietly, with a spreadsheet and a tired heart. The night after the baby shower, I couldn't sleep. The lemon frosting smell still clung to my hair. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the checkbook I'd used for years to bail Candace out. Wedding deposits, honeymoon upgrades, rent, baby shower, a running list of generosity disguised as help. The total, $8,743.12. I never realized how heavy guilt could be until I saw its price in black ink. I opened my laptop and began making what I called quiet moves. Not revenge, just a slow, careful untangling of every tie they'd wrapped around me. The next morning, I called the property office for the apartment Candace and Nick lived in. "Hi," I said calmly. "This is Joanne Hildebrand. I'm a co-signer on Unit 3B. Could you please send me the form to withdraw after the 12-month period?" There was a pause. Then, "Of course, Ms. Hildebrand. We'll email it right away." Click. Done. The first thread pulled. Then came the bank. I'd lent them money from my savings last winter, just for 1 month. That month turned into 8, so I drafted a repayment notice, firm but polite, with an itemized list of every expense I'd covered. When I finished, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, my decisions were mine. Not made from guilt, not from fear of being called selfish, just mine. As the sun rose, I looked around my apartment, simple, quiet, full of the things I'd paid for myself, and realized how different it felt from their rented chaos. Every corner of my life was something I'd earned. And yet, they made me feel ashamed for having boundaries. I thought back to how it started, when Candace and I were kids. She was the golden one, the performer. The princess with curls Mom couldn't stop brushing. I was the quiet one who held my breath whenever our parents fought. Dad would just mutter, "Don't rock the boat." So I didn't. I became the peacekeeper. And when you play that role long enough, people stop asking if you're okay. They just assume you'll fix everything. At 15, I got my first job. At 18, I was paying part of the utility bills. By 21, I was helping Candace with emergency tuition. Every time she called crying, I said yes. Every time Mom said, "Be patient, she's still growing up," I believed her. But Candace never grew up. She just learned that my love had no price tag. I remembered the night she called from the airport, sobbing because her sandals broke before her honeymoon. "Joanne, please, I can't go to the Bahamas with cheap flip-flops. I need the ones from Bloomingdale's." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. And yes, I sent her the money, because family, right? Aaron, my boyfriend, was sitting across from me that night, shaking his head. He'd seen this pattern long before I admitted it. "They don't love you for what you give," he said softly. "They love that you'll never stop giving." I hated that he was right. But that night, sitting in my kitchen with the spreadsheet open, I finally understood what he meant. I wasn't going to confront them yet. That would have been too easy for them. To turn it into another drama where I'm the villain. No, this had to be slow, methodical. A shift they'd only notice when it was too late. The next few days I watched from a distance. Candace posted photos from her baby shower, the same one where she humiliated me. Captions like, "So grateful for my amazing family," and "Couldn't have done it without everyone's love." Not a word about who actually paid for it all. Not a word about the sister she'd publicly reduced to a wallet. I didn't comment, didn't like, didn't even open the notifications. Instead, I printed every receipt, clipped them neatly, and slipped them into a manila folder. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was preparing documentation. Because something in me had finally shifted. I no longer wanted apologies. I wanted closure. 3 days later, the paperwork arrived, the lease withdrawal forms. I filled them out, signed my name with steady hands, and scanned the documents. As I hit send, my stomach fluttered. Not from guilt, from freedom. For the first time, their chaos was no longer mine to clean up. That evening, Mom called. Her tone was sharp, rehearsed. "Candace said you embarrassed her. She's in tears, Joanne. You need to apologize. She's pregnant." I stayed silent. "Did you hear me?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "and I'm not apologizing." "What has gotten into you?" "Respect," I said quietly. "That's what's gotten into me." She hung up. I let the silence stay. Later that night, I sat with Aaron on my couch. He poured 2 glasses of wine. "You look different," he said. "I feel different. What's next?" I smiled, watching the city lights flicker through my window. "Next," I said, "they're going to learn what happens when the ATM closes." The morning after, before dawn, a delivery man stood outside Candace's apartment with a certified envelope. Candace didn't know it yet, but inside was my quiet roar. Every dollar, every receipt, every apology I'd swallowed turned into proof. And as the delivery truck drove away, I sat in my car across the parking lot, sipping black coffee, waiting. Because this time, I wasn't the fixer. I was the reckoning they never thought would come. The world was still half asleep when it happened. That soft, hesitant knock on their door. 6:43 a.m. The sun hadn't even decided if it wanted to rise yet. From my car, parked across the street, I saw the porch light flick on. Nick opened the door, shirtless, hair sticking up like he'd wrestled with his pillow all night. He squinted at the man in the blazer standing in front of him. "Delivery for Candace and Nicholas Reed," the courier said, holding out the envelope. "Certified mail. Need your signature." Nick mumbled something, scribbled his name, then shut the door with the same lazy confidence he used when laughing at my expense. He had no idea what he'd just signed for. I watched the envelope land on their kitchen table through the window. Candace appeared moments later in a robe, hair messy, rubbing her eyes. Her lips moved. She asked what it was. Nick shrugged, tore it open. That was my cue. I stepped out of my car, folder in hand, and walked across the parking lot. My heels clicked softly on the concrete, each step sounding like punctuation. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even nervous. I was calm, almost detached. The kind of calm that comes after years of swallowing words you should have said sooner. Nick opened the door again, confusion etched across his face. "Joanne?" Candace appeared behind him, mascara smudged. "What are you doing here?" "Following up," I said, holding up my folder, "since apparently I'm not family, just the one who pays for everything." Her face drained of color. "You're joking." "No," I said softly, stepping inside before they could stop me. On their coffee table sat the opened envelope, the one I'd had hand-delivered. Inside was an itemized breakdown of every expense I'd covered for them over the past 4 years. Wedding costs, rent, baby shower, honeymoon, the crib, even your maternity shoot. I flipped through the pages, each one crisp and stamped. Total, $8,743. Nick scoffed. "This is petty, Joanne." I met his eyes. "Petty was laughing when your wife called me a checkbook in front of 50 people. This," I tapped the folder, "this is accountability." Candace's lip trembled. "You can't do this. I'm pregnant." "That's exactly what Mom said," I replied evenly. "But pregnancy doesn't erase cruelty." She blinked, speechless. "I'm not suing you. Not yet," I continued. "But I am requesting repayment. 90 days. After that, I file in small claims court." Her voice cracked. "You wouldn't." "I would," I said. "Because I finally learned that love without respect is debt, and I'm done carrying it." Nick stepped forward, trying to look intimidating. "You really think a piece of paper scares us?" I smiled faintly. "No, but your credit score might." He frowned. "I already sent notice to your landlord this morning. My co-signer withdrawal is effective in 30 days. Good luck renewing the lease." Candace's voice rose. "You're heartless." "No," I said, my tone firm but steady. "I'm healing. There's a difference." Her eyes filled with tears. "You're ruining everything." "I'm cleaning up a mess," I said. "One you made when you decided I was useful, not family." She snapped back, desperate. "You're just bitter because you don't have a family of your own." For a moment, her words hung there, sharp, poisonous. Once they would have broken me. Now they just echoed in the space between us. "Maybe not," I said quietly, "but I have self-respect. And one day, when your child asks what happened between us, I hope you tell the truth. That I loved you enough to stop letting you walk all over me." Candace's face crumpled. Nick muttered under his breath, but I was already walking toward the door. "Joanne, please," she started, but her voice broke. I paused in the doorway, turning just enough to meet her eyes. "Here's the thing, Candace," I said softly. "You can't humiliate someone who's already stopped needing your approval." Then I left. Outside, the morning air was cool and sharp, like a clean slate. I slid into my car, closed the door, and exhaled. My hands were steady. My pulse was calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't the fixer or the provider. I was just free. By the time I reached home, my phone was already lighting up. Dozens of missed calls, texts from Mom, even one from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "She didn't mean it, Joanne. She's hormonal. Don't throw away family over a joke." A joke. That's what they called public humiliation. I put my phone face down on the counter and brewed coffee. The silence that filled my kitchen wasn't loneliness. It was peace. No one asking for favors. No one manipulating me with tears. I didn't block them right away. I wanted them to see the difference, to feel it, to know what life looked like when the person they took for granted was no longer at their beck and call. When I finally did hit block on Mom's number, it wasn't angry. It was deliberate. A quiet full stop at the end of a long, exhausting chapter. For years, I'd confused being needed with being loved. Now I understood. If love requires constant sacrifice, It's not love, it's servitude. And I was done serving. The silence that followed was deafening and beautiful. Days passed, then weeks. No emergency texts, no late night calls asking for just a small loan, no family group chat updates pretending everything was fine. At first, it felt strange. I'd spent so long being the family's default problem solver that peace almost felt wrong, like I was missing a sound I'd grown addicted to, the chaos. Mom tried the guilt approach first. She left voicemails dripping with disappointment. "Joanne, she's your sister. She's struggling. You can't just cut family off like this. You'll regret it someday." I didn't reply. Each message was a reminder of the manipulation I used to mistake for love. Then came the online spectacle. Candace posted vague stories on social media, photos of the baby bump with captions like, "Some people love you when you're useful, others disappear." A few mutual friends messaged me privately, saying, "She's hurting, maybe just talk to her." But they didn't know what it was like. The exhaustion of being everyone's safety net, only to be laughed at for it. Meanwhile, I was finally breathing again. I started going to the gym after work, something I hadn't done in years. Aaron noticed the change first. "You look lighter," he said one evening as we cooked together. "I feel lighter," I answered, like I stopped carrying other people's storms. We started traveling on weekends, hiking, long drives, quiet breakfasts with no buzzing phones. For once, my life wasn't about damage control. It was about discovery. Mom showed up at my office once, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. She smiled too sweetly. I thought we could talk. I stood there, professional, polite, but unmoved. "Mom," I said gently, "you can't fix years of enabling with a casserole." Her smile faltered. "You've changed." "Finally," I said. She left the dish anyway. I threw it away that night. Candace, from what I heard, was unraveling. Her entrepreneur husband's ventures fizzled. Their lease wasn't renewed after I withdrew. They moved in with his mother, the same woman who once called me too serious. Karma has an interesting sense of timing. But I didn't feel smug. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted distance. Distance from the endless cycle of guilt and apologies that never led to change. One evening, my phone rang. A number I almost didn't recognize. Dad. He rarely called. He was the quiet kind, the man who survived family storms by pretending the waves didn't exist. "Joanne," he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. "Can we talk?" We met at a small diner halfway between our towns. He was already there when I arrived, nursing a black coffee. He looked older, thinner, smaller somehow. Years of avoidance had taken their toll. "I saw what happened, Xia," he said after a long silence. I raised an eyebrow. "The baby shower?" He nodded slowly. "That and everything after. Your mother told me to stay out of it, but I can't." He sighed, staring at his coffee. "She's always said, 'Don't rock the boat.' But the truth is, Joanne, the boat's been sinking for a long time." Something cracked inside me. He'd never said anything like that before. "I just want you to know," he continued, "you did the right thing, for yourself." I swallowed hard. "You mean that?" He nodded. "Yes. I should have protected you more when you were young. You carried too much that wasn't yours." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Decades of quiet pain found words in the space between us. "Thank you," I said finally. He smiled faintly. "You know, your sister still thinks you'll come back, that you'll fix it all like always." I laughed softly. "She might be waiting a while." He chuckled. "Good. She needs to learn that lesson." When the check came, I paid for both meals, not out of obligation, out of choice. A small act of love that cost nothing in dignity. As I left the diner, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace that wasn't borrowed or conditional. Peace I'd earned. A week later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting was unmistakable, messy cursive with little hearts over the eyes. Candace. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside were 4 pages of apologies, excuses, and contradictions. I was hormonal. "You embarrassed me first. Mom said you'd forgive me." But then, near the end, one sentence stood out. "You were never just the one who paid for everything. You were the only one who ever showed up." My chest tightened. I read it again, slower this time. It wasn't redemption, but it was something real, finally honest. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my drawer, not to keep the pain, but to remember that closure doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it arrives as understanding. The next morning, as I poured my coffee, I smiled to myself. The silence that used to feel lonely now sounded like peace. And peace, I realized, was never something they could take from me again. I didn't respond to Candace's letter, not because I was bitter, but because I'd finally learned that not every story needs a sequel. I placed it in the top drawer of my desk, beneath a stack of travel brochures Aaron and I had been collecting. We were planning our first real vacation together, just the two of us, no family emergencies to cancel for. The silence stayed, and in that silence something unexpected began to bloom. Peace, purpose, and the kind of freedom that doesn't need to be announced online. Candace kept posting vague quotes about forgiveness and toxic people. Mom kept trying to mediate, sending me messages like, "You know she didn't mean it. She misses you. Be the bigger person." But I'd already been the bigger person my entire life. This time, I just wanted to be my own person. Some nights, I'd walk along the pier near my apartment and think about the years I'd lost to guilt. How many times I'd skipped things for myself to save them from consequences. How many apologies I'd made for things I didn't even do. The funny thing is, when you finally stop rescuing people who hurt you, they act like you're the villain for saving yourself. But I'd stopped playing that part, and it felt good. A few months later, Dad called again. His voice was lighter. "Candace had the baby," he said. "A girl." I hesitated, unsure how to feel. He continued, "She asked me to tell you. She didn't know if you'd want to know." I thought for a moment, then said softly, "Thank you for letting me know." That was it. No more. He didn't push, and I didn't offer more. After the call, I sat on my balcony, the city lights flickering like distant stars. For years, I'd tried to buy love with kindness. Now I understood something simple. Real love doesn't send invoices. It shows up when you're at your lowest and doesn't ask for proof you deserve it. Aaron joined me, setting down 2 mugs of tea. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I think so." "Do you ever miss them?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "But not the way it was. I just wish things had been different." He smiled gently. "Maybe that's the first step. Wanting peace more than control." He was right. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need them to beg for forgiveness. I just needed peace, and I had it. Months passed. Seasons changed. Candace never paid back the money. I never chased it. That debt wasn't worth another ounce of my peace. Then, one afternoon, I received another letter. This one was shorter, handwritten on plain stationery. It read, "I'm sorry, I can't undo what I said, but I'm trying to be better. For her. Thank you for showing me what boundaries look like. Candace." There were no hearts over the eyes this time, no excuses, just truth. I folded it neatly and placed it beside the first letter. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or sorrow, only closure. Life moved forward, quietly and beautifully. Aaron and I took that trip we'd talked about, drove along the coast, watched sunsets that looked like they were painted just for us. I stopped checking Candace's social media, stopped wondering who was still gossiping about the baby shower incident. The world didn't end when I set boundaries. It just became peaceful enough for me to start living again. I learned to cook for myself, started painting again, adopted a stray cat that showed up one morning on my porch, scruffy, stubborn, but sweet when it wanted to be. I named her Lucky, because that's what I finally felt. Lucky to have peace, even if it came with distance. One Sunday, I opened my desk drawer, looked at both letters, and smiled. They were no longer reminders of betrayal, just evidence of growth. Evidence that sometimes walking away isn't cruelty, it's courage. I whispered almost to myself. You were right, Aaron. Letting go isn't losing. It's choosing peace over pain. And for the first time, I truly believed it. I closed the drawer, grabbed my keys, and headed out to meet Aaron for brunch. No guilt, no hesitation, no second guessing. Just a quiet, steady heartbeat that said, "This is what freedom feels like." Final narration, voice overtone. Family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the ones who show up when you say no and love you without a price tag. Candace once said, I wasn't family, just the one who pays for everything. But she was wrong. Because family isn't something you buy. It's something you earn by how you treat people when the giving stops. They never wanted a sister, just a sponsor. And I finally canceled the subscription.